Hello, my name is James Ward. I am a certified teacher with more than 30 years of experience teaching ESL. Today, I'm going to discuss some of my thoughts about what it takes to learn and also to teach English. I've been doing this for 30 years, so I have what I consider some very useful insights. First, some background. I graduated from Fraser University in 1986. After I graduated, I went to Mexico City, and when I arrived in Mexico City, I took a teacher's course and started teaching right away. I taught for a couple schools in Mexico, but after a year, I decided I wanted to do things my own way. I found a partner, and together we opened a small language school, English language school in Mexico City. Finally, after about 4 years away, I decided it was time to come home. So I packed up from Mexico, came home, took a teacher's course, and got my teaching certificate at Brock University, and have been teaching English ever since. The other important thing that happened to me while I was in Mexico was I learned to speak Spanish. So I am aware I know how to teach English well, but I also know about the struggles and challenges to learn another language. And I realize that learning another language is a lot of work. So, when I'm combining both my learning and my teaching experience, I've come up with a few very basic ideas about what it takes to really learn another language. Today, I'm just going to discuss what I consider the three most important things you need to understand. First, grammar. Lots of people say you don't need to learn grammar to learn English. They're wrong. Without a strong knowledge of grammar, all the mistakes and everything you do wrong is just random. And if everything is random, it's also your number of mistakes are limitless. When you learn grammar, you're essentially learning patterns. I will give you an example of a grammar mistake and the pattern that it represents and how you can avoid similar mistakes. A lot of people, when they come to Canada, they use the term flowers garden because they see a garden full of flowers and they say it's a nice flowers garden. But that's wrong. And the rule is that in English, when you put two nouns together, the first noun becomes an adjective, and adjectives in English are never plural. As you will recognize, when I was discussing why that mistake was wrong, I used some grammatical terms. Adjective, noun. Now those are simple terms. But the other reason you learn grammar is so that you understand the terminology. So that when there's a discussion of mistakes, you understand the terminology. The terminology was much more sophisticated than just noun and adjective. There's passive voice, there's modals, there's conditionals, there's past participles, and a lot of other terminology. When you understand the terminology, discussing mistakes is much quicker and much more efficient. Which leads to my second point about learning another language. You need to take every opportunity to use whatever knowledge of another language you already have. I learned about 70% of my Spanish in Mexico in about the first 6 months. I studied grammar, I studied vocabulary, I even read children's books to increase my vocabulary. This was all helpful, but the biggest single problem that it did not help me with is it did not give me the confidence to speak to native speakers. If you don't feel comfortable speaking to native speakers, you will not use much of the language you're learning. So, one of the biggest advantages that we offer is that we offer many opportunities to meet and to interact with native speakers outside of classroom time. The more you interact with native speakers, the more comfortable you become with the language. And the more comfortable, the more often you speak. And when you're interacting with native speakers, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And that's actually a good thing. Because the final point that I want to discuss today is that you need to be corrected. I would have learned my Spanish in Mexico much faster if I had been with people who were willing to correct me. But none of them were teachers, so they were not interested in correcting me. Many people never receive proper correction, so they end up learning things incorrectly. Unlearning something takes much more time than learning correctly the first time. When you become a more accurate speaker, it leads to more confidence, and when you're more confident, you speak more often. However, you also need correction to learn how to speak as a native speaker. A book will not teach you that. In fact, right now I am putting together my own textbook with dozens, if not hundreds of examples of how people actually use the language. I'll give you an example. Everybody knows that in English we say hello or hi to greet somebody, but there are many other ways. For example, another common way is, how is it going? But when people say, how is it going, they say, how's it going? Or, how have you been? How have you been? People say, how you been? Some people just say, what's up? And some people even just say, hey. You need to know or recognize all of these ways that native speakers speak, because that is what you will hear. You do not need to know how to say those yourself, but you need to recognize them. Anyway, for the moment, that is all I'm going to discuss. The 3 points in review are, you need to learn grammar. You need to practice whatever you know as often as you can, and you have to be willing to be corrected. You have to actually want to be corrected. That's it for now. We'll get back together later.